can invite someone. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, let's, where's the screen share thingy? Right here. All right, yeah, let's get this thing rolling as folks are joining in, and we're just starting. We just hit the recording button there, so we always start with the privacy note. We are recording these meetings so that we can make it available to others later, you know, to catch up or review things that we've shared. So if you're going to be sharing anything on your screen or even verbally, make sure that you're not sharing anything that's going to cause you trouble. But it's going to be on the internets, right? So, excuse me. So what is this virtual brown bag all about? It's a place that we get together to share tips and tricks on all sorts of different things, experiences, things that we've learned the hard way and we feel like sharing with others to make their lives a little bit easier. Maybe frustrations or difficulties. You're trying to implement something, you're facing some sort of challenge, technical challenge or what have you, you know, let us know. Maybe somebody else has gone through the same problem and can help you out. Or, I mean, we've had in the past situations where people would just pop open their, you know, code editor saying, hey, how do I address this? And then the group just help the person, you know, find its way. So this is not supposed to be a one-way conversation. So at any point in time, if you feel like, you know, jumping in, making comments, suggestions, whatever, if you would like to share something, just say, hey, I've got something to share. And by all means, please do it, right? Logistics, we do this every Thursday from 12 to 1 Central Time on Skype, at least for now. And anybody who's willing to either share or learn or doing both is always better. You're more than welcome. Things that we've shared before, and I do need to update this slide. George, I've put down a note on my little notes here that I'm taking right now to update this slide, but just to give folks an idea, because sometimes people are like, what should I be sharing? I don't know what I could share. Well, I mean, look at this list, and this is a node list. There's more. We've been all over the map. It's whatever fancies you, whatever you feel passionate about, or you feel like, you know, it's something that you would like to talk about, just share it, right? You never know who that thing is gonna be helpful to. We have the virtualbrownbag.com website where we always keep the link to this Skype channel for folks to find it. We have our account on Twitter, on Slack, where we can continue on conversations that we were having here. You can go on Slack and just, you know, keep expanding the conversation or ask questions or whatever, you know, just building this little community here, which is always helpful. So let's roll. Let's see. Anybody would like to join or to jump in and start sharing anything? Otherwise, man, George and I, we are talkers. We always have something. So please, if you have anything, just, you know, chime in.
Yeah. All right. We can just start.
We can,
and everyone else.
Always get started.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So while I have the screen share on my box here, I can go quickly through a couple of things, which can spark conversation. If you guys feel like expanding on the things that I'm talking about here, we can do that. Otherwise, I will just shut up and, you know, switch over to whoever wants to share. So we were gonna have the Agile Shift conference in June. Of course, that's been postponed for obvious reasons. But since we are sitting on a lot of content from different speakers, we decided to do a free virtual version of the conference with a couple of those talks that we were going to have in presence. We're going to have that online through the month of June from Monday through Thursday. So one talk every day over lunchtime. So if you're interested, you know, just hit the website, you know, sign up. I'll be doing the talk that I was going to be doing in presence. I'll be doing it online, which is my Beyond the Daily Stand-Up, an intro to Scrum. So essentially helping out folks that, you know, they get together, they do their daily Scrum every other day to talk for like 30 minutes with a group of 30 people, and they think that you're doing Scrum. Not quite. So I created this talk to essentially guide people through the main things about Scrum. So check it out. There may be a talk there that you would be interested in. And then next, what I thought about sharing today was I looked at my blog, the statistics that I have on my blog. I picked up the 5 posts over the during this month that got the most views. So I'll share with you what those are. And if you feel like talking about any of those topics, this will be a good time. Otherwise, again, we'll just move on to the next thing. So number 5 on the list, my AAA or given when then test style. That's number 5 there. So that's essentially me saying, you know, when we start learning about writing tests, we quickly learn about Arrange-Act-Assert, the AAA standard. I don't do that anymore. I've totally replaced that with given when then. When you come to think about arrange, given, act, when, assert, then. Except that Arrange-Act-Assert is very technical. Only developers use those terms. Given when then, it's English, right? So while I don't feel comfortable sharing my Arrange-Act-Assert tests with non-technical folks like business analysts, product owners, I do feel totally comfortable showing them my tests written in given when then style. So it just bridges that communication gap between technical and non-technical. People have been appreciating that on the teams I've been working with in the last several years. So I figured I would like to share that. So that's one thing. That's number 5. Number 4, refining a user story. I recently have an experience with looking at a user story from a team and then giving my input on that story, how I would refine that user story. And essentially that user story, it starts the way I like it, with the in order to, what is the business value? Except that it said, in order to quickly navigate through sales order. Well, okay, you're telling me you want to navigate through sales order quickly, but you're not telling me why you want that. Is it because you want to get back to Candy Crush real quick, or you want to go back to social networking, scrolling real quick? Why is it important, right? And then I have a whole description as to what I was thinking as I was reading that user story. And finally, I rewrote that as in order to better assist the customer and quickly move on to the next customer. That's the business value. That's what's going to be bringing money into the business. There's somebody on the phone all day trying to help out multiple customers. They want to optimize that, to streamline that flow. So that was something I've put my thoughts out about that. Number 4, this. Oh, sure.
I do have a thing I want to. Sorry, I just got distracted for a split second. I want to talk about the other given when then.
Sure.
Because we've talked about this before, but I want to give kind of my point of view.
Yeah.
I prefer when then.
Okay.
When then.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, I'm getting echo feedback from someone, so I don't know. Maybe mute your mic if you're not talking. Steve, I think it's you.
Okay.
So here's the thing. Given when then, we're talking about setup, action, assertion.
Mm-hmm.
From whether the setup. So from the point of view of the assertions, all that you care about is that the state is what you want it to be.
Okay.
Whether it became the way that it is that you want it to be is from just a previous step or from accumulation of all the previous steps taken one after the other is kind of a detail of what point of view you look at it from.
Okay.
So again, from the point of view of the assertion, everything that preceded it is just the thing that happened that led to the assertion that I can make. And from the point of view of the test setup, I mean, the fact that you are doing a thing, it is the setup. I mean, the setup is that you triggered the thing to happen. So I always find that it's not super easy to break them down. It's almost a conventional breakdown rather than anything with hard theory behind it, because it's almost it's like a time sequence things usually, but not always. So I prefer to simplify just when and then, and you could just be neat. You could break the when down into multiple steps. So when this, and when that, and when this other thing, then you make your assertions. So I kind of like doing it that way because it kind of, again, emphasizes that there's not necessarily, like, the thing is that I could do a thing and do another thing and then make an assertion against that. But then also say, okay, well, assuming that completed, let's keep working on it and do another thing and another thing and another thing and do an assertion against that. Well, then from the point of view of that second assertion, all of those things would have happened, but there were really two thing systems under test there. So I think it kind of gets really complex if you start thinking about stuff that way, and the kind of straitjacket from that is just, the way out of that straitjacket is just not to worry about given, just when, then. And it just happens to work out really nicely that's like what systems like Mocha and Jasmine and a few others already do. So I like that, even though they don't quite use those terms.
Sure. And that's fine. I mean, as long as that kind of communication works well for you and, most importantly, the team that you are working with, if everybody involved in the process of building the value to the business, I mean, that is fine. I personally, looking from that angle, I would agree with that if we are looking at testing a workflow where there are several actions and events happening, and then we are building that. I like keeping with given when then, because that way I'm focusing on one action at a time. So the given will be giving me the context for the scenario that I'm testing, right? Because each user story may have different scenarios. So I say scenario A, whatever scenario A is, what is the state of the world, of the system for that? So that's my given. And I say, okay, given this state of the world, when this thing happens, this very distinct action or event, then I want to observe this thing. So it's almost like a difference between unit test and integration test, right? I don't like seeing a bunch of whens, because then it can get confusing, to the readers as, okay, there's a lot of things happening here. So I tend to focus on, okay, in order to make that user story small, one thing should be happening, right? So like on the user story that I was showing on the next post, it's very specific about the state is somebody called, the company on the phone, and they are saying, oh, I need to place an order, I need to do X, Y, and Z. There's a very specific context. So I'm not going to go like, when the customer has a problem, when the customer picks up the phone, when the customer dials in the number to customer support, right? I don't want to walk through all those. I'm assuming already, well, that is the scenario. The customer has a problem. We are stating that as the name of the scenario, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but here's the thing, like, well, really, in order to create a call in and create an order, that item has to already be in inventory, right? And it at the very least, it has to be browsable. So at least if you're testing Happy Path, right, the item has to be in inventory. Right. And if you're not testing Happy Path, then the item is not in inventory, and they're still making that order. So again, you could take, and there's a series of items before that, right? You have to know the customer's shipping address. So there's a series of these things that come before it. And yeah, you could say like, okay, I'm grouping everything verbally and putting it in a given block. It's just, I like to emphasize that there's not really a distinction from there. And when you do have it, when you don't do the grouping, you get this really nice tree of scenarios, because it really is all about the workflows. I think there's very few things that aren't about workflows in programming that we just like, oh, okay, I just need an algorithm. Okay, cool, done. Like, I love to test that stuff, but
yes,
usually it's not that.
Yeah, no, again, I totally take the need for testing workflows, absolutely. But I do not want to diminish the value of testing that one, isolated action, that isolated point in time. So it's like, give me a snapshot of the workflow as it took me to where I am, and let me focus on this one thing right now, right? And then I can always take a step back and see the workflow thing that tests the whole enchilada, but allow me to be a little more narrowly focused on, distinct actions, features, or activities that they need. But then again, it's one of those that as long as like you as the team lead, or whoever's like taking charge of things, you are making sure that the whole team speaks the same language and everybody's on the same page, then whether you're doing given when then, when, it really doesn't matter. What is not cool is to have like one person on the team following all of these practices and nobody else cares. Then it defeats the purpose. Whether you say given when then or blah, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. Anybody else on the call would like to jump in and tell us how wrong we are, or, just add your 2 cents to it?
Or change topic entirely.
Or change topic entirely. That's totally fine too.
Yeah. Please jump in.
Absolutely.
All right, if not, you can keep going.
All right, so let's see. So blog number 3 on my list, what the heck? Mouse, please work, thank you. Is my blog post from yesterday. I think I got people's attention with the title, right? Code coverage is worthless. When you use big words like that, people tend to click on the link and read it. It's essentially my take on code coverage. Because when I do talks on like unit testing in general, people always ask, oh, so what is the percentage, code coverage that you ask for in the gated check-in, I'm like, I don't, honestly, because most people use code coverage for the wrong reason, and that's my main point in this post. And why I say that is because I've seen a lot of cases out there. Are you guys still hearing me? Because I'm seeing everything frozen. Oh, okay, good. Because it looked frozen on my screen here. I've seen many cases of real nasty tests out there that like a lot of setup, a lot of mock this, mock that, and no assertion. Well, guess why? Because somebody has put a code coverage policy in place, so people write tests that mostly make sure that the code does not blow up when you run, like it doesn't throw exceptions, and then it raises code coverage.
Are you still on the test style post? Because that's what we see on your screen.
No, I've moved over to the code.
You might want to stop sharing and restart again.
Yes, thanks for bringing that up. Let me try that. Screen sharing options. Come on. Yeah, the Skype screen is frozen. Let me move it over to another.
Yeah, so long as OBS is still running.
Yeah. I don't. What the heck? Huh.
Hold on.
We still hear you. You're still crystal clear audio-wise.
Interesting that it's recording. Yeah.
I guess I could have hit start recording too. Just picked it up, but I didn't think of that.
I don't know what it does. Well, anyways. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, should I resume from where I was, or are you guys in the middle of discussing?
I don't know. If anyone has any questions, we could do it. I think we were kind of toward the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just bringing up the fact that I was starting to learn Blazor server side.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. We all agreed that it tastes similar to web forms, but
oh, okay, that's bad. Oh man.
Not necessarily. It doesn't have to be the bad side type of web forms.
What was the good side of web forms, man?
Awesome componentization. Like you could componentize the crap out of something and run on the front end and the back end to the point that you had like third-party vendors distributing component things that you would just drag and drop into your application, and the front end, back end of it would work synchronously together. That was awesome. Like nothing else does that, really. Yeah,
I don't know, man. I have such just bad memories from web forms. I cannot like see the good in it because just the bad stuff was so bad that's like I don't want to touch that thing anymore.
Well, Ryan, you said you had a blog post coming up about that, right?
That's right. I'm working on it. I haven't finished it yet. I'm gonna do what JB did with Code Behind a while back, of like how Code Behind is actually awesome.
Yeah.
You remember that post? That was what, 5-6 years ago or something.
God, I don't.
I do not.
Are you working in Elixir a lot, Ryan?
I'm not. I kind of follow like lots of different languages and then try to repeat stuff in .NET. So copycat.
I am so looking forward to that post, man. Hurry up.
Yeah. I have a thing I could talk about too.
All right.
Come back to your, or we could go back to your blog. Well, okay, let me jump in. So I mentioned this before. I kind of started reading this book, Writing Software. It's called Writing Software.
That's Joao Lowy, right?
Yeah, Joao Lowy, the guy who architected WCF, and then, oh man, this is recorded because I'm gonna badmouth him a bit, but no. Okay, here's the thing, and I'll post like there's a podcast I listened to with him. It's like an hour-long podcast where he's explaining it. He's so full of himself. It's ridiculous. Like 75% of it will be like this is a guy who refers to himself as a master architect and like always mentions that he was referred to as a software legend. Okay, fine. Like 75% of his stuff is like him like saying analogies that don't really work to further his point if you think about them, but they like sound like they work because he's got this German accent that's like gives it a ton of gravitas. But then like 25% of the stuff he says is like so profound and right on the money. Like, oh man, this is gonna take me a while to digest and think about. And so I'm not very far in the book because it's very dense. I'm like keeping like a quarter page of notes on like every page that I read. But being like stuff like, oh, this is a really good way of putting stuff. This is a terrible, I disagree with this, like all sorts of stuff. But so it's very slow going, but I am kind of starting to see the outlines of what he's proposing. And it is pretty interesting in that, like, and I mean, he'll like the book for like several chapters. He kind of goes on about like functional decomposition, like takes shots at like domain-driven design, which I swear he doesn't really understand because it actually fits okay into his book he's proposing. So there's a couple different aspects to what he's proposing. First and foremost is like, all right, that system design, like the actual system architecture, is just one of two pieces to the puzzle. The second being project design. That means I'm going to be translating kind of how he says it, but like to how I think about it. But I think it's a very good point that, and it's really not at odds with Agile, though it kind of seems reflexively at odds. Like he is like, don't charge straight ahead into your project. I mean, a lot of us have kind of said this in the past. It's like you have to, Agile does not mean no upfront design at all. You have to sit down and actually spend some time not only architecting your system, but once you're done architecting your system, architecting how the project itself will go. What are your metrics? What are the constraints you're working with? Who's doing what? And, how do you know whether you're doing well at any given point in time? Like, it's really kind of irresponsible to just start forging ahead writing code, right? Yes. If you don't have a lot of that set up. And I 100% agree with it. I think that's going to be like the second half of the book where he talks about where he talks about the project design. I'm actually very much looking forward to it because I feel like that part, it's hard, and beyond Gantt charts, nobody really has a great solution to it, and it sounds like he has at least some methodology around it. The book is called Writing Software, but writing like Rightting. And yeah, I'm sure if you look at Libby, like I'm sure there's some of them that are available. Libby is a really cool app where you just put in your library card and it's like, here's everything your library has available. You can get it in an ebook format or audiobook. So that's one thing. But I'm still in the first half of the book where he's kind of proposing, talking about systems design. And one of the things he spends a while shitting on is the idea of domain decomposition, which I kind of get. Because ultimately the point of encapsulating anything is that it might change, right? It might change, and when you have to want to go in and rechange that code, you want to just be able to change this one component and have everything inside of it encapsulated and not having to change like a bunch of stuff across your whole application. Like that's what Doom is when you I think when we do DDD, that's kind of what we're after, right? We want to, when we define bounded context, we're kind of on that. But I have always felt that DDD doesn't give super great advice on how to identify bounded contexts. We have like the whole like listen for two different meanings of the same word sort of thing, but there's got to be more to it than that, because like you end up breaking up stuff along kind of business area lines, but there's no guarantee that those are the only ways that it's going to change. So the place where he starts is a volatility analysis, in which you're identifying areas of volatility, and you're kind of thinking in terms of like, okay, what sort of areas might change in the future, and in what way, and you want your architecture to properly encapsulate those areas. So an example that he gives is designing a trading system, right? A day trading system. So, for example, it's for day traders now, but you could see it being reasonable, even if no one's asking on it, who accesses the system might change, right? The users who are, right now it's just day traders and maybe their managers are accessing it, but down the line, maybe end customers want to access it to view their portfolio status and so on. So really, you identify that as an area of volatility, maybe go on to try to encapsulate that in a component so that it can change independently, right? Who has access to, who can access it, and what they have access to. Something like what is being traded and what the workflows around a trade are is something that probably will change, right? Workflows about trading are going to change depending on where you're trading, right? You might at some point decide to trade commodities instead of stocks, right? So encapsulating that could be interesting. Someone's saying something, or oh no, okay. And he has this point. He has this really nice analogy where he says like if you think about like a well-designed system, like what's a well-designed system that really stands up to change? Well, take like the human body. We evolved to kind of what we are now 200,000 years ago. There hasn't been any major evolution since then. We've grown a little bit taller because of our nutrition, but but what we do now is very different from what we were designed for from what we evolved for. And yet our body supports it pretty well. And it's because the core thing that was optimized for, and the core systems, all of them were designed to kind of capture the concept of survival, right? To survive. It still does and that's such a deep core concept that there's all these systems inside of us that aren't functionally decomposed. They don't have anything to do with what we do at a daytime, right? It doesn't have anything to do with me ordering out for food. There's no part of the human body that's about that. The same as there was no part of the human body that was about hunting and killing the pigs a long time ago. But there are kind of more fundamental breakdowns of fundamental concepts that capture it really well. And so you can kind of, by going through this process, you can start the outlining of what he's outlining, which is breaking things down on a more fundamental and deeper level. So that as you put them together, it's very consistent, which is a very cool idea. I'm only like 50 pages to it, but I'll post the interview that he does about it. If you can stomach someone's like huge egomaniac talking, it is very much worth a listen. There's some great nuggets in there.
Good. Sorry. Yeah, as you were sharing it, Lester is sharing a book recommendation, Fundamentals of Software. Looks interesting, of software architecture, as well as a YouTube channel about architectural things. Thanks for sharing that. I was not aware of those things. I'm taking notes of that as well. Good.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I'll put this all together on today's video description so that people can find it.
Great.
Very cool. Excellent.
Yeah, I recommend getting into this if you're interested. Am I still breaking up forever? Yes.
A little bit, yeah.
Got it.
That's odd. All right.
Well, I'm on the hard line, so it shouldn't be too bad.
Oh, I see that. I think Michael was trying to share something, but you may be on mute. I saw that you were talking, but I couldn't hear you.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I've been really happy with this blue USB microphone. The quality is so much better than just what comes out of the MacBook Pro.
Huh. And it does look cool. I hadn't seen that one before.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to use, and I've been really happy with it. And actually, I've done kind of like the Pepsi challenge with it during a video conference. Like, okay, how does this sound? Then I plug it in. How's that sound? And they're just like, it's a world better.
Very nice. Well, thanks for the recommendation. Taking note of that as well. As I tweak my setup here. Very cool.
Yeah, I should probably use my fancy microphone for these calls.
I guess it would make it better, my friend.
Yeah, because there's also like the hardware that's inside the microphone that contains. Well, okay, I'm an electrical engineer, DevOps systems person. So it contains. Well, it's a condenser mic, but it also contains electronics which can buffer the sound going via the USB over to your computer. So it's a lot more steady.
Interesting. Good to know that. All right. Thank you for sharing that, Michael. Very cool. All right. Anybody wants to jump in and share something else? Or should I go back to... I have 2 more blog posts that I can share that people have been viewing quite a bit, I guess.
I just want to remark that I've never seen anybody with a dollhouse in their office before. That's pretty cool, George.
Oh yeah. Wife made that.
Nice.
Run in there.
So Google.dev.
I think someone's talking.
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
Google Dev beta came out. Has anybody tried it out or anything to say about it?
Has anyone tried what?
Yeah, it's Google.dev. It's out in beta, and it's kind of connected to the GCP, the Google Cloud Platform. And it's like a kind of development environment. I'm still kind of learning about it. I'm still toying with it. It's still in beta, so I was just wondering if any of you devs ever played with Google.dev.
Google.dev? No, I hadn't.
Looking it up. I hadn't heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of came out, so I don't know, jump in, and I'd like to see what, where I'm not like a front-end developer. I do like back-end stuff, systems, information security. But I'd like to see what it's like the front end, by developers and so forth. I'd like to see what they think about it and if they can find any tips or tricks on it.
Huh. Well, thanks for sharing that. I'm actually sharing my screen. I just went to the website to see what that is all about. And yeah, like you said, it is in beta. So google.dev, it's a destination for developers to learn about Google technologies and unlock achievements.
Oh, so I mean, that sounds more like a training thing.
Right. Topics. Let's see what topics say.
Kind of looks like the Microsoft.learn.
Right. CI/CD on Google Cloud Platform, Android development. Huh. I wonder if they have something on Angular. Python. Huh?
This looks more like opposite than that, but try searching. The search bar at the top, right?
Yes. Developing on the web platform, Angular. Yeah. Stay current. Okay, what do those look like? Getting started. Angular components. Okay, some newsfeed. Videos. Okay.
And Ryan's volunteering to talk about a bunch of stuff, actually. So we could probably have him talk for a while, too, unless you really want to get to one of those blog posts.
Oh, no, I mean, totally open for whoever wants to talk about whatever. Let's see, Ryan says what? I could share something about Azure App Service static apps. Please do. Yes.
Yeah, because this stuff's cool, but like none of us played with it. But it sounds like an interesting play platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to share my screen.
Good.
Let's see. There we go.
Where did I stop mine as well?
Cool. Can you see the blog post?
Sir.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I got into the preview for the Azure App Service static apps and had been looking at a tool called Svelte and its kind of extension called Sapper. I don't know, has anybody seen these before or heard of them? Svelte and Sapper?
Well, certainly, yeah. That was off 2 seconds.
Yeah, so Svelte is pretty interesting in itself. I would argue it's kind of like Razor, which we were describing earlier, which is kind of interesting. So if you're looking for a JavaScript framework that feels a lot like what you can do in .NET, this one's pretty close. So you do like blocks of script style and just markup, and then it compiles all these things. So you basically create components this way. So like this one has like a nested P as nested.svelte, and then you can actually use it like this, where you actually embed it in your like another component or into your app. So it looks a lot like JSX if you've used React, but it effectively lets you create like new markup tags and things. But it feels very similar to the way Razor works. So I thought that was kind of interesting. They have a framework for doing more of this called Sapper that lets you generate static applications. And so I did a test of using the Sapper thing with Azure App Service Static Apps. So Azure App Service Static Apps is it's really like a deployment mechanism. So it basically takes your application, generates a static site with it based on how you define it. So it doesn't have to be like purely static, but like the way I set it up, in this case, I actually had it call the Sapper export, which is one of its commands to generate the static site. So it basically goes through all of your routes, does like a headless browser to go navigate everything, and then save all the HTML files that it would generate into a folder. And what the static apps thing does is it actually will run this command, generate all that output, go to the output, stick it in Azure storage as a static site, which has been around for a while, but it does this automatically for you. And it also has the capability of looking for any kind of like Azure functions that it can deploy as an API. So if your static site has like JavaScript call or like AJAX calls to an API endpoint, you can actually use Azure functions as your API endpoints and call through it. And really all that the static apps thing is doing is providing a tooling mechanism. I got another blog post coming up on this. I've just kind of all the details of how it works. To set it up, you create your app service static app, which you can do through a VS Code plugin if you're using the Insider VS Code, or you can go to the Azure portal, Once you get into the preview and say I want to create a new app service static app, and then it asks a couple of questions, links you into your GitHub repository, and the flow is basically it hooks into your GitHub repository, generates a GitHub workflow in GitHub Actions that has like the build and deploy step. It closes pull requests if you're having things come through, and it all builds successfully and everything. So it kind of automates a lot of the deployment steps and setup steps and everything else, which is pretty convenient if you're not used to doing a lot of DevOps work, or if you're just getting started, you want to build something and not have to worry about all the details. You can do a few things to like configure the build process and stuff, but it's pretty straightforward and pretty easy. I mean, this isn't a very long blog post, and this is only covering the end or the generation of a static app. We've got another blog post again coming up that'll show how to do Azure Functions. But it's pretty convenient, and it was pretty nice. You can go and kind of fiddle with the GitHub Actions workflow if you want afterwards. But I thought it was pretty slick. I also thought it was quite funny that the Sapper default template uses Borat as a landing page.
Success. I like it.
Yeah.
It really places it at a point in time, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's like a very quick 30,000 foot view of all three of these things. But anyway, it's been kind of fun playing with them, and I haven't been using this for like anything in anger, but I'm impressed with the setup, and I liked the convenience of just thinking in the same way as I would if I was doing like a Razor or Blazor server-side type of application. So, which I've been doing recently. So it was
Sapper
nice.
doesn't have to work with Svelte, right? They just happen to be using it here.
No, Sapper is built on top of Svelte.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, sorry. Do you mean the Azure apps, server static apps?
Well, yeah, just all that stuff he described. Like, is that intrinsic to using Svelte?
Sapper is. The app server static apps can work with anything. You can use Hugo. I think they're adding support for additional tools like Jekyll, so some like the more standard things. But they've got out of the box support for Vue, React, Svelte, and then like Next.js, Nuxt.js, which is, and then Sapper. They're all Sapper, Nuxt, and Next are all the same sort of like bigger standard kind of content management, I guess you could say, like templates on top of the visual, like the Vue frameworks, like Vue and React and Svelte. They all kind of do the same sort of like routing and adding in a bunch of extra details that are not part of the core frameworks. But they have templates already available for a lot of those things. If you go look at their the static apps, I think actually if you go to the documentation, it has like information on how to create your first app. So a lot of this, Gatsby is another one, but like, yeah, it's a ton of different things that they're supporting, and they're working on prioritizing like which ones to add next. So it's pretty cool and very, very easy to get started if you're interested in this stuff.
Absolutely. Cool.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah. So Azure Static Web Apps, yeah, I'm still trying. So they're just basically it's just hosting basically, right? Or is it closer to Lambdas?
It's both. So again, it's so you can deploy this all yourself if you're if you want to go through the work of setting up all the DevOps stuff, and you can do it more according to your own conventions. But it's basically deploying an Azure Static website in Azure Storage.
Okay.
And then also deploying an Azure function optionally and hooking those together under the same domain. So that's the part that's kind of, I guess, new, in addition to the fact that it does, like, it builds out the deployment workflow and everything else for you.
Yep.
But you can do all this stuff and add your own custom domain. I think this actually does support custom domains as well. So you're not locked into I think it's like Azure Static Apps is the .NET is the standard custom domain it adds. You could easily do the same thing yourself if you wanted to. It's just that it does all this stuff for you and has a template, like an ARM template that is kind of undergirding a lot of this stuff for you.
Cool.
So it's really more of a convenience mechanism, but it is pretty convenient.
Yeah. Cool.
We like convenient stuff.
Yeah. I still have. I'm gonna have to get into like AWS and GCP and Azure stuff sometime soon. I've managed to avoid it almost entirely.
We're on the same boat there then.
Yeah, now that I'm like CTO, there's like so many things that come down to AWS questions. I feel like I have to learn it. And I really don't want to.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. So have you guys just switching topics real quick? There was a post I saw this morning as far as some new C# things coming up that was talked about at the Build conference. One of them is the top level program. You guys know what I'm talking about there?
So you just write code at the top level?
Yeah, well, so for your main, CS file, no, I don't have the post here, but I'm trying to find somebody who can actually find the value in that feature, because it was not clear to me why they said, oh yeah, we're also working on this thing. It's essentially, when you create like a main CS file, say you are new to C#, you're going to do your first Hello World app, and then you get that main CS, and it has the using statements, the class, blah, 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 the method, the main method, and then console, write line, Hello World. So you can pretty much get rid of those 8 lines of code and replace it with 1 line that just says console, write line. And on the post, it just says, oh yeah, it removes all of that boilerplate code, so it makes it easier for beginners learning C#. I'm like, does it? Why is that a point of a talk at the conference? I don't get it. Like, it's not like it was that much harder to write a Hello World before. So I'm very confused, and I'd like to see if anybody can find something useful. Did you find it?
Can you all see my screen right now? Am I sharing my screen? I'm not.
Not yet.
Claudio, have you used the CSX scripts?
You mean like so?
No, I have not.
This right here is what you're talking about. There you go.
Yes, it's
Which
exactly.
you actually can define classes as well. Yeah, right.
Right.
There you go. It runs just fine. So this is already you have to install it. I installed it yesterday. npm .NET tool installed .NET script. But yeah, it already exists. It's useful. Honestly, it's useful for me again as I've been getting more and more into literate coding. So like writing documents, so I have little bits of code being spat out throughout it, and then writing and spinning up some code. It's actually the reason I did this. I installed this last night is because it's going to be useful for me for writing bits of code with documents with bits of running C# embedded in them, which I can then share with people and use it to demonstrate concepts. And then, so it gets rid of a lot of that stuff. And actually, one of the things I was thinking about if we couldn't find anything else was write an Emacs extension on this call to support .NET script. But fortunately, we didn't have to do that because I'm not great at writing those.
Okay.
But yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
I can show a similar example in F# if that helps. It is quite convenient.
Okay.
Can I share my screen real fast?
Sure.
Okay. So I just did this kind of again playing around with the static web apps. So this is just an F# script, and I think C# scripts have this as well, where you can actually pull in NuGet packages directly from like references.
Ooh.
So I'm actually going through and pulling in some data, pulling in an HTML like template file, and then using Angle# to go and like stick some options into a select element, and then generating out the output, copying over style. It's basically like I guess like a template language type thing. I'm going in and just modifying HTML, stamping it with some stuff, and statically generating the output, copying over everything else, so that then the Azure Static Web Apps can take this and deploy it into the web app for me. So when I mentioned you can actually go and change the workflow, I've done that a little bit. Just trying to use something in like .NET, but this is an F# script file, and I'm using .NET FSI, which is similar to .NET script with a CS file. And there's no like main or anything. It's just a script I can run in like a script session or whatever, but it's pretty convenient. I don't need like a whole program and like compiled assembly or anything. I can just run this. So it's useful for like little tasks.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, if any of you guys are on the Slack, the VBB Slack, I just posted a link that has a reference to this thing. And it's on another computer. That's why I'm not bringing it over here to share. But it's funny that, like in the article, it says, writing a simple program in C# requires a remarkable amount of boilerplate code. And there's like 8 lines of code. Most, like 4 of them are just curlies. Like, what are you talking about?
That's silly, but when you have a bunch of different blocks, then it adds up.
Right. But it's just like that was not a selling point to me.
Well, I think we might forget how easy it is for us to think about that now. I've been helping with the Microsoft Tools program at our local high school, and it's always astounding how many times they forget to add like static void main if they're writing it from scratch.
Okay.
So unless it's given to them, remembering to write it up correctly the first time is like one of the harder parts. They can usually get the innards of whatever they're trying to solve, but all the boilerplate stuff is the stuff that they seem to struggle with the most.
Okay.
That may be because they're focused usually on writing the innards and algorithms and data structures and stuff, but that boilerplate always seems to cause their programs to fail more than anything else.
Okay.
All right, I do have to go.
Good. Yeah,
But-
it's just the top of the hour. So yeah, guys, thanks a lot. There was a lot of great conversations today. This is more like it. This is more like the virtual brown bag as it's meant to be. So thanks everybody for joining in, sharing all the goodies, and I hope to see you all back next week.
Right.
All right, take care, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Claudio.
Thank you.